Okay, this is the major point section. Okay, so this is the major point section. This is probably going to be 2 videos because there's quite a few quotes here. So from the 09 edition, page 17, quote, "It is far easier to concentrate power than to concentrate knowledge." So I think this is essentially an attack on central planning or more certainly non-democratic countries. It's far easier to take the reins of power and to do bidding than to concentrate knowledge or essentially let free markets fly, because that would certainly be a concentration of knowledge. There's more to say for that, but I can't think it off the top of my head. Okay, from page 28, quote, "It is one thing for the population at large to make their own individual transactions and accommodations on matters pertaining to themselves individually, and something quite different from them to make collective decisions for the society at large." So again, this is an attack on central planning, an attack on intellectuals or anyone making grand decisions for an entire populace. Those individuals, this is similar to a quote in the economics video, economics part or section. Individuals know their life context, they know their budgets, they know their salaries, their monies, their cultures, or the kinds of cultures they wish to practice. They know their families. They are far more productive making their own decisions than someone in head office in some capital city in government making those decisions. It's also an argument that's sometimes used in education against public education, that how can a group of people, whoever they are, in some government office or school board, how can they possibly make decisions that are going to benefit the individual children in a school? How are they going to know the context of those kids, what they need? They cannot. And necessarily a curriculum is made for no child. It is made for a classroom. It is made for a group of kids. The descriptions and the unique aspects of those children are unknown and cannot be known. They cannot make a curriculum that's going to help those individuals. They have to assume that they're all faceless and uniqueless. That's kind of the point there. Page 107 of the 2009 edition. Quote, "The revealed preference of intellectuals is to gain moral authority, or, vicariously, political power, or over the rest of society." So, moral authority, so essentially that is just they want to be able to direct society. They think they know better than people, and they want to gain the moral authority. And by moral authority, it's not, that term is not a, it's almost a metaphor. It's not literally what it means. It simply means that they want the power. They want the moral high ground, sometimes it's called. In other words, they think they know best, and they want to be in a position where their decisions are carried out. So now, page 112 of the 09 edition. "One of the bases for intellectuals' sweeping pronouncements about whole societies is conceiving people in the abstract." So this is kind of what I just talked about. Without the specific, concrete characteristics found in flesh and blood human beings as they exist in the real world. So just as I was talking about schools, this is the point. And consider it in politics. Taxpayer. Well, what's a taxpayer, right? There's no like a gray human being without any characteristics of the taxpayer, or the evil businessman, right? With any characteristics. Evil businessman, big corporations. None of those are real people. None of those people have families, have their own life baggages. They're not real people, right? They're evil, or the evil bankers. Oh yes, they're not human beings either. So he's just making the point that many policies, many grand sweeping central policies, make individuals into abstract, or make people into abstract things. And they don't consider that they're real life human beings with their own context. Okay, now page 493. This is from the Revised Edition. So this isn't a quote. This is just, I guess, a paraphrase. So he suggests that communism failed because it denied the more massive source of judgment and information from common people and instead left it all to the intellectuals. So I think I probably talked about that enough before. So he goes through the reasons for failure of communism. So number one, so these are quotes. The enormous fragmentation of consequential knowledge. So this is back to individuals. Number two, the heterogeneity of people. So this is denying unique individuals. Denying individuals, perhaps even. It's known that communism was obviously collectivist. Number three, this is in a quote. Thinking in terms of abstract people in the abstract world. Oh no, this is a quote, sorry. So quote, thinking in terms of abstract people in an abstract world. But reality does not go away when it is ignored. End quote. Page 154. Quote, many issues are misconstrued, not because they are too complex for most people to understand, but because a mundane explanation is far less emotionally satisfying than an explanation which to hate and heroes to exalt. This reminds me of movies, which I don't watch many movies anymore because it's filled with emotions that are, it reminds me of a quote from The Matrix, which was a good movie. Emotions are specifically, it's a quote, it's not necessarily scientific, but I think it was a great quote. Emotions are specifically made to overwhelm the reasoning parts of the brain. This is why we attempt to have impartial judges. We don't allow people of family members of let's say someone is murdered. We don't let their family members decide what happens to the accused or even adjudicates that case. No. Those people are distraught for good reasons. They are not objective at that time. They are overcome with emotion, and that's why we have others without skin in the game that have a clear head make those decisions. So, going back to movies, movies are very, very emotional rides, and they are meant to get people riled up to go out and, well, you know what they used to do? They used to get pitchforks and torches and go burn people's houses down. That riling up of the emotions still happens today. We just don't get pitchforks out, or I guess riots still happen, and police have to get out the tear gas, but this is one way of getting people all riled up, and intellectuals certainly use this, although I think politicians would use it more, but there are certain intellectuals that definitely make use of this tactic to get people all riled up, as I've said. So related to this quote, page 501 from the Revised Edition, quote, beliefs can survive discordant evidence when those beliefs enable the intelligentsia to see issues as moral melodramas, staring themselves on the side of the angels against the forces of evil. What? I don't think I need to say any more about that. Okay, continuing on, page 287 of the 09 edition. Quote, the demand for public intellectuals is largely manufactured by themselves. There is neither a large nor prominent role for them to play in society unless they create such a role for themselves. The only thing I'll add to this is that often issues are maintained by those who research them. You can consider it a giant conflict of interest. Let's say you are a researcher on poverty, or you're an intellectual about poverty. Because your life career is based on poverty, do you not have some interest in keeping poverty alive? Or perhaps of searching more and more to try to find it and keep it alive in that way? Intellect is not wisdom. So this is actually really interesting distinction he makes in the new edition. So he talks about intellect. There's two things here. There's intellect and there's wisdom. He says that intellect is quickness in understanding information. Right? So maybe you're very good at you can go through logic steps, or you are quick at understanding something or learning a language or something like that. Your quickness of of reading something or something like that. Whereas wisdom is proper use of that information. And so he kind of attacks intellectuals on being far more on the intellect side, and they are, of course, because they get into these PhD programs or whatnot, and so they are. They begin everyone in university, and there's some people, of course, not in university. There's actually terrible statistics up here in Canada, and it's probably similar in the United States. A lot of gifted kids, I don't know what the exact definition of this, but you can consider it maybe over IQ 120 or something like that. A lot of gifted kids actually drop out of school because it's crap and they don't want to deal with it. But anyways, the average person that goes to university is of higher intellect than the average in a society. But what he's saying is that intellectuals are more on the intellect side than the wisdom side. And I believe that he is trying to infer that opinions, if they're going to be made by intellectuals, need to be from wisdom and not from intellect. Okay, next part here. This is still in major points. But I gathered together a whole bunch of quotes that talks about circular validation of ideas. Now this is how some people's ideas, new ideas, get maintained because they don't rest on valid propositions. They rest on circular reasoning. And I'll read off a few quotes so you know what I'm talking about. So page 8 of the Revised Edition. The difference or, quote, fault line, unquote, between certain intellectuals are, quote, those whose ideas are ultimately subject to internal criteria and those whose ideas are ultimately subjected to external criteria, end quote. So what he's talking about here is that consider engineers. Engineers construct a new kind of bridge, or they come up with it, they theorize new kinds of bridge. Now, how do you test those ideas? Well, you build the bridge. You may get some ideas and some criticisms or some criticisms, which aren't necessarily bad. They can be helpful, of the theory of the bridge. But ultimately, an engineer has to build that bridge, or they have to build that robot, or their ideas are going to sit in a textbook until someone else tries those ideas. And so, in that case, there's an external criteria to validate those ideas. You build the bridge, and if it works, then you're good, or the robot, or whatever. But a political theorist, his ideas are only validated by other political theorists. So that's what he means by the internal criteria of validation. And so now you've got a problem with that. And so what Sowell says on page 9 is the danger is that, quote, they remain circular in their methods of validation. So they're just, everyone in, political science or political theorists, political philosophers, the only people that really have an eye on their work are one another. And so they, pat themselves on the back with new theories instead of testing them on perhaps others or in the real world. So that's the point there. Page 510 from the Revised Edition, quote, the humanities, I'm in the humanities, are a classic example of a field where the only relevant criterion of success is what is accepted or rewarded by peers. So this is, again, of the circular method of validation. Going on from the Revised Edition, page 545. Where's the quote? Okay. The, quote, vision of the anointed represents a huge investment of ego in a particular set of beliefs. And this investment is a major obstacle to reconsideration of those beliefs in the light of evidence and experience. So like I said, a professor or a researcher does a lot of work in an idea. Their perhaps entire person or their ego is represented in that work, their new theory of something, and it's very unlikely for them to change their mind because they will lose all that prestige and all of their name. That is why a lot of theories never die until the till the creator of that idea moves on. They have little incentive to change their mind once they've done a lot of work in their field. Okay, from the Revised Edition, page 14. Quote, the fatal misstep of such intellectuals is assuming that superior ability within a particular realm can be generalized as superior wisdom or morality overall. And the point of this here is that he criticizes intellectuals who go outside of their discipline. So Bertrand Russell is a great example. Bertrand Russell started out as a mathematician and did work in mathematics. But then he became a philosopher somehow. And he believed that he had things to say about philosophy, even though that wasn't his discipline. So that's it for major points section.